What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Daily Dose. I'm your host, Dylan Davis. To my right is my co-host, Matt McGinty. You can follow him on Twitter at Matt_McGinty. And today we are joined by my man, Scotty. You can follow him on Twitter at Scotty Drowned. You can follow his pod on Twitter at ST Philly Sports 1. He is the host of Scotty Talks Philly Sports. Man, we've been trying to do this for a while, and we're finally getting around to it. What's going on? How was your weekend?
Hey man, it was a good weekend, nice and relaxing. Didn't finish it off the right way, with that Sixers game, but we'll get into that. But yeah, just a laid back, cool, relaxing weekend. Had a few brews, just chilled, watched the games. But yeah, man, thanks for having me on the show. We've been trying to do this for a while. Finally got linked up, and finna have some good content here. Good talk.
What you have? I saw what you have last night. You're a Modelo man.
Yeah, man. I can do the Modelos sometimes. Me and my boys, when I used to live back in Maryland, we used to always get the Modelos for UFC fight night because that's like the UFC drink. But nah, I do a little bit of everything.
Okay, Ginza seltzer man himself. Seltzer and Blue Moon.
Hey, the calories. You got to keep those calories off, man. I feel you.
All right, let's get into it, man. So we're going to, on today's show with Scotty, we're going to talk a lot of Sixers, a lot of good, some bad, some needs improvement, and maybe if I want to make myself depressed, we'll talk about the Philadelphia Eagles towards the end of the show, but we'll see. So over the weekend, the 76ers finished 1-1 on an insane 50-point performance from Joel Embiid on Friday night to take down Zach LaVine and the Chicago Bulls, followed by a loss to the Raptors in Ben Simmons and Shake Milton's return last night. Boys, Scotty, you could start. What were just some things that stuck out to you in last night's loss or Chicago's game, whatever one, if you want to bounce back and forth to recap the weekend?
Yeah, of course. So just to start with last night's, obviously this is the one that's fresh in my mind. I'm kind of in a hard place on to analyze this game. It's kind of in the middle. Was it Nick Nurse just putting down this footprint, this game plan on how to shut down Joel Embiid? Yeah. You know what I mean? 25 and 17. I don't know if that's shutting him down, but just to make it harder and tougher on him, make everybody else have to score around him. I'm kind of in the middle of thinking it's that, or is it that we just couldn't hit a freaking shot last night? You know what I mean? 7 or 8 minutes spurt in the fourth quarter where we couldn't get a field goal, and you're not going to beat, a battle-tested Toronto team like that. They're playoff tested. They were without Kyle Lowry. That is a little, kind of disappointing to lose to them, especially having Ben and Shake back. But you could see Shake was still a little out of the rotation. He was a little off last night. He did get some shots to go down. But Ben, man, he's looking aggressive. And I'm sure we'll get into that. But if you guys want to recap the weekend a little bit too first, I'll let you guys go ahead.
Well, it's just funny you brought up not having Kyle Lowry, and it just made me think for a second. Like, the Sixers are still sitting in first place at 20-11, and in those 11 losses, it's like 2 have come to Portland, this one with Toronto. Some of the games they're dropping to shorthanded teams. It's weird, and then they'll step up and take down the Lakers in the manner that they did, and so it's and they dropped the one to Brooklyn when they didn't have Kyrie or KD before the Harden trade. So, it's weird in that sense. I'll try to keep it a little more positive. Not that you were negative anyway, but I'll go back to the win. Joel Embiid with that 50-point performance, man, like, just some things that are sticking out to me. He's getting whatever he wants, wherever he wants on the floor. And you talked about post positioning before we went live, and it's the truth, especially against Nick Nurse in Toronto. He's going to have to, try to find his spots lower down in the post or on the block by the rim. But when I look towards the end of that Chicago game, he has the spinning fadeaway in the corner to basically seal the game. And then he has to swing through, draw the contact from the elbow and get the roll with his touch and knock down that shot and get to the line. Like, he's just been unbelievable. And my biggest takeaway when you look at Friday night's 50-point performance and then last night 25 and 17, you're looking at his best performance on the year probably, and then his worst. And his worst was 25 and 17. That's where I'm at right now. So even though they lost the game, when I watch his worst game be that, and I watch, as you alluded to, Ben Simmons continue to attack the rim, even after missing the last 2 games, after the 42-point basic triple-double, there were positives to take away from another loss.
Yeah, I agree.
Again, you got some animals upstairs? What's going on?
No, it's right through this wall, dude. My turn?
Yeah, go ahead, Gabe.
Cool, perfect. I'm going to go negative side here. This bench is approaching abysmal at this point. If you look at the plus minuses from both games, the Bulls game and the Raptors game, not one player on the bench went positive. I know plus minus is a little skewed stat in some situations, but like if you look at the Chicago game, Mike Scott minus 20, Dwight Howard minus 15, Tyrese Maxey minus 11, Furkan Korkmaz minus 11. And in the beginning of the year, we were talking about how, like, I remember night one, the bench like had this awesome performance. It almost won us the game because the starters didn't look that good. And we were talking about like, oh, this is such a weapon to have, and your bench can just win you a game. And it has been the polar opposite these last couple weeks. We have a couple guys on this team that are in the rotation because they need to be, that are essentially giving you nothing. Like Furkan Korkmaz, we were talking about it before, is giving you nothing. Matisse Thybulle still looks just lost on the offensive end. We can't get anything out of him on the offensive end. Yeah, that was my negative. But then, I'm a big Brian Arcidiacono guy, big Villanova guy, and I just look at like guys like that. Like, why can't we have a guy like that off the bench? It doesn't need to be this big name that has played in the NBA for this many years. He's done this and that. Like, our guys are giving us literally nothing.
Well, Scotty, you put out a tweet. This will make Ginn happy. You put out a Josh Hart tweet last night, didn't you?
Yeah, man. Yeah. It's crazy to me that, Josh Hart, went to Villanova, won national championships, and, like, it's never talked about. We tag so many players to Philadelphia, but it just seems like there's never any interest in Josh Hart. And he seems to do everything that we kind of need. He plays hard. He can hit shots. He's not, a dead-eye three-point shooter, but he can hit shots, and he plays hard. I think that's what we're missing as well. Aside from shooting, it looked like last night they just got out-toughed by Toronto. They looked like they were more confident in what they were doing. And, I think they just lack glue guys like that. Matisse is on his way to becoming that type of player. He could be, probably a better defender than Josh Hart. And then, if he could just put the same type of intensity into the offensive end, then he could easily be that scrappy guy. He just needs to get confidence on the offensive end. But I agree. The bench is abysmal, man. You see it as soon as the bench comes in the game. That lead disappears, man. And you saw it in both games. We had huge leads, like 14-point lead, I think it was, against Toronto, right? Yeah. And then Chicago, we had a monster lead in that first quarter as well. Yeah, like that. It disappears within a second, man, when that bench comes in. And that's one thing I would want to, Doc, I wonder why we can't just stagger, well, I know Ben wasn't in the Chicago game, but, stagger Ben, Joel, and Tobias. Do not leave that bench unit out there without one or two of those guys. You can't afford it.
Dude, I think something that's telling me is that they don't expect that to be the lineup down the road, and that they're okay with throwing that lineup out there now because you're not going to have to stagger those minutes in the coming weeks. I could also be entirely wrong, and that they do need to figure that out because they don't plan on making any type of huge move, if you know what I mean. But
guys, there was a lineup, I believe, in the Bulls game on Friday that literally, my God, I think it was Dwight Howard. He had Furkan and Joe out there together. Thybulle and Maxey, I believe, was the 5. And I wanted to turn the game off for a few minutes because that's close to unwatchable, as unwatchable of a lineup you can have. But before we move on to the main points that I want to get to, Embiid, Simmons, trade rumors, and some more stuff, Chris says Isaiah Joe is taking Cork's minutes. I also wouldn't mind Josh Hart. He'd be perfect. Yeah, so Doc kind of alluded to it last night. Isaiah Joe will be getting run over Furkan now. He said you have to earn your minutes. So Doc wasn't holding back, but just a few things. Me and Gint talked about Matisse Thybulle coming into this season, and we were kind of saying how, Matisse could be a starter. Like, Danny could come off the bench. You talked about Danny's role being a little smaller before, Scotty. Danny could come off the bench if Tease would just get to 36% from three, 37% from three, league average. He's not. Like, if he had that elite defense and then if he could be league average at three, he could be one of the best 3-and-D players in the entire association. So then that could help things. He hasn't taken that step this year. You talked about Nick Nurse's defense or not hitting shots. If it happens again tomorrow night, I'll give all the credit in the world to Nick Nurse and his plan against Joel Embiid and this Sixers offense. But I mean, man, when you just look at the numbers from Friday, everyone talks about Danny Green, shooting wise. He only had 9 points. He fouled out, like you said, but he shot 50% from the field and 50% from three in 23 minutes. Seth Curry, I love me some Seth Curry. But in 12 more minutes than Danny Green, Seth only had 12 points, 4 of 12 from the field, 2 of 7 from three. Tobias Harris, 1 of 9 from three. Shake Milton, 3 of 11 from the field. Like, if these guys just hit some shots, different ball game, right? And then Gint talked about the bench. Final thing is, we saw how poor the bench was on the West Coast Strip without Shake Milton. And we desperately miss Shake. And I'm not taking anything. His first game back, bad shooting night, hit 3 threes in the second half. I think Shake will bounce back. But my point is, Shake gave you 9, and your entire bench scored 16 again. Chris Boucher outscored your entire bench. This is like the 4th or 5th game where one player from the opposing bench outscored your entire bench. Gint's right. It's approaching abysmal. Like, it's unplayable. And what worries me about that is the fact that we had 2 things over the Brooklyn Nets when they made the James Harden move. It was the fact that we have Joel Embiid. They don't have any rim protection right now. They depleted all their bench depth in the move. We're pretty deep. Well, we're not. And I'm not trying to be Mr. Negative here. I'm high on this Sixers team. I said I think they can contend right now. But it doesn't mean they're without fault or a little bit of negativity around them. And the bench is the biggest part of that right now.
Let me just touch up on one thing you said. You had mentioned T-Style being one of the best 3-and-D players. And, like, if he could consistently shoot the ball, it would almost be like he was Mikal Bridges. You know what I mean? Sorry, I always had to throw that one in there. Mikal Bridges is like my favorite college player ever besides Josh Hart.
Man, you look at Mikal Bridges, and I mean, look at what
he was ours. He's
exactly what we need on the team right now. It's ridiculous. I mean, I try not to think about those things, but yeah.
Yeah, we like to try not to think about those things, and Gint has to just drill you with them every night. He's got to get his Villanova segment in there for half a second. All right, man, but let's get to a more positive track because it is just a loss. They still have half a game lead in first place. Doc Rivers, because of the 2 wins out of the last 3, is the Eastern Conference All-Star coach in the All-Star game in 2 weeks. So I guess I'll start there. All-Star voting. We know that Joel Embiid is in the starting 5 for the Eastern Conference team. But then you look at Ben and Toby, right? Are both of them going to get in? Are one or none? I guess I'll ask you this. Do you think one of the 2 gets in? And then my follow-up is, who deserves it more? Because me and Gint had this conversation just for fun. It's not like to, try to divide anything. It's just for fun. Who deserves it more? Because Ben has been on an absolute tear. I want to get to his tear after this conversation and the numbers he's been putting up. But that's very recent. Toby hasn't missed any time and has he didn't have a good night last night, and the Washington opener wasn't a good night. Outside of that, he's been consistent all year, averaging over 20. Who deserves it more?
Yeah, it's tough, man. And, it sucks because – up until this late push, there was probably, just a slight chance that Ben would even make it. Now, let me ask you guys this. I'm kind of confused on how do the captains pick the rest of the team out of the batch? Like, is it that the fans will vote in the reserves and then the captains will pick? Or how does that work?
The coaches in the NBA fill the rest of the rosters. And I think there's like a media vote in there too as well. And then the captains pick the players that were selected after to their team.
Okay. Oh, right. That is so. It's no more Eastern Conference is Eastern Conference.
No, Kevin Durant and LeBron.
Yeah, Ben could play. Yeah, that's right. Ben could play for Team LeBron. So yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So if it's the coaches, I mean, you would hope that the coaches could have some sense. Because I do think that, in all reality, both of these guys belong on the team. You look at the Sixers, they got the number 1 seed in the East. Who are the guys? Who's the reason because of that? You know what I mean? So I think if we were going off what usually gets guys into the All-Star games, they would get in.
I agree.
It seems like Philly always gets this alternate narrative of winning awards and all of that. So I won't be surprised if one or both get snubbed. But if I had to choose one right now, I'd probably go Toby. Just because of consistency, what he's bringing. He set a goal and he's actually out there reaching it. He said he wanted to average 20 a night on 50% from the field goal, 40% from the three, 90% from the free throw line. He's close to or hitting all of those marks. The only one I don't know about is the free throw, but Toby's been consistent, man, and I feel like he just deserves it. He's a front court player, so there's a lot more. I think there's a lot more room for him to make the team there compared to the backcourt. So I think in that respect as well, he has a better chance than Ben, but I don't know. Ben's going on this tear, and I guess we're going to get into that. But it seems like he always does this around All-Star season. Like whenever it's time for them votes to come in, he turns it up a notch. So we'll see. What do you guys think?
One thing I will say about it is, if you look back at Golden State's run, and Draymond was consistently getting into the All-Star game, and there was guys like Devin Booker that weren't making the All-Star team that were putting up 25 a night, and the fans love it because it's a young guy that just doesn't have any help, quote unquote, which I think could give Ben some assurance because that's clearly what the coaches are voting on. I think wins are definitely important to these coaches, as you could tell, like I said, with Draymond. Draymond wasn't putting up above probably 13 points a game.
12 points.
That's what I'm saying. So Ben, I think they both have a good chance because, again, we are 20-11. We're the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. But, you just look at some of these names and it's like Julius Randle, for instance. Like if the Knicks weren't any good, Julius Randle wouldn't be a thought. But the Knicks are in the playoff picture right now, and he's putting up monster games left and right. So it's the only argument are Bradley Beal, but he's in because he got in the starting five.
He's averaging 36.
And then you look at Zach LaVine, he's averaging 28, but they're not winning any games. So I don't know. It's tough with the. I said to Dylan, I want to say they're both going to get in because I think, like we said, they both rightfully deserve it. So I'm going to say they both get in, and in the back of my mind, no, they're both going to get snubbed, and I'll be upset.
I'm going to say that one gets in. I think they both deserve to. If I have to give the nod to one of them, you and I discussed it already. I'm going Toby just because he's done it all year. You throw in 2 to 3 mediocre games. The fact that Tobias Harris, is giving you a quiet 18, 19 some nights, that's an improvement on Tobias Harris, and he's done it consistently. All the credit in the world to Ben over the last month of games or the stretch, but I would give the nod to Tobias. It is just weird, though, because, I guess, I shouldn't put too much stock into the Twitter world and everything and the fan votes because, my God, Derrick Rose is getting more votes than Ben Simmons or Tobias Harris, so it doesn't really make any sense. But I thought the fact that the Sixers had the 1 seed, at least for right now, would put more stock into it. I thought the same thing. I think the same thing with Embiid MVP numbers. If the Sixers are a top 1 or 2 seed, then I think that's where his stock even increases in the MVP votes. I thought the same would happen for Ben and Tobias in the All-Star voting. It hasn't happened yet. Like you said, Scott, you would like to hope that the coaches have more sense than the fans do, and that'll hold more weight as compared to, Julius Randle, Zach LaVine. And it might not even be fair to them. Like Ginn said, Zach LaVine's averaging 28. It's not his fault that the rest of the team sucks, okay? But does he deserve it more than – because he's averaging 6.5 more points than Tobias Harris or whatever. His team is awful. Tobias Harris' team is number 1 in the East. It's weird.
Yeah, because even if you look at kind of I hate to call them borderline guys, but that's what they are at this point. Randall has a case, right? He's got the Knicks in the playoff picture. Right. They would not be in the playoff picture without his scoring. But then you look at guys like Vucevic and Sabonis. Are these guys they deserve to get in the All-Star game over Tobias Harris? That makes zero sense. So that's why I was kind of wondering are the reserves going to be meshed together with the West as well? Because the West, I feel like, has a lot more options at the forward and center positions. You know what I mean? You got guys like Zion. AD probably won't make it just because of the injury. Like, he'll probably have to be replaced. Brandon Ingram, Christian Wood, Gobert. I mean, there's a lot more options, it seems like, on the West. Yeah. But depending how that works, Tobias should make it, man.
It's like, so there's 5 already on the team, so it's 7 more. I'm pretty sure it's 4 front court guys, 3 backcourt guys from each conference get in, and then they can pick whoever they want. So there still is a certain amount of East guys and a certain amount of West guys that get in.
Okay, yeah, so Tobias should get in, man. I hate for there to be all these stipulations, but in reality, he should get in, man. And I'm going to be really disappointed, especially for him, more than Ben, just because Ben's gotten the All-Star nod before. Tobias deserves it, man. He's playing really well, and it's kind of going unnoticed.
I guess my entire point is if he doesn't deserve it this year, when the hell does he deserve it?
Yeah, like if he doesn't get it this year, he's not getting it, man.
Like, what's he got to do? Average 25 on the first place team next year? Like, Joel's chucking up over 20 attempts a game. Tobias is only getting the ball so often, man.
That's what I'm saying. Efficiency has to count for something.
I don't want to mess up this name, so EECIAJ says once you could have days where your all-star game votes count for 2, it lost its credibility. The bench is a decent indicator who deserves to be an all-star because the coaches vote on them.
That's
Scott,
true.
you alluded to that. So we will see. I think that gets announced tomorrow. I think I saw February 23rd.
It's going to be it's a TNT night, so whenever probably the next TNT games are, because they always need to announce it. So, I mean, who knows, though?
Yeah, so it's coming very soon, I believe. I could be way off with that 23rd number, but pretty sure I saw that. Let's get into one of the 2 guys we were talking about, guys.
Alshon Jeffrey just got cut.
Did he? Oh, wow.
Farewell, buddy.
Seeing you, bud.
Thanks for everything.
Super Bowl. Yeah, thanks for the Super Bowl. Thanks for the Super Bowl, Alshon. Let's get into Ben Simmons' recent tear because over the last 4 games, he's been out of his mind, averaging almost 28 per game, 7.5 assists per game, 8.8 rebounds per game. I mean, my God, 69% from the field, 79.5% true shooting percentage, 31 of 39 from the line, 1.3 steals per game. But it's all resulted in 4 L's.
Yeah, that's the kicker, man.
The weird thing is, everyone says you can't waste this MVP season from Joel Embiid in the middle of his prime. If Ben's starting to click this way, then it really says you need to make a move because you can do it now. I don't care what Brooklyn has building over there. You can do it now. What I want to ask you guys, and then you look at the month of February. The entire month, 22.3 points per game, 8.6 rebounds, 8 assists, and just over a 68 true shooting percentage from Ben Simmons. So, Scott, you said about the All-Star push, and we've seen that in recent years. But recently, it was after the Utah game, I believe. I think it was after the Utah game. Ben came out and said how, he's starting to figure out his mental, and he's starting to put it all together, and it was fun to dominate a game offensively, and so on and so forth. And now you're seeing literally a month stretch where it is aggressive Ben. Do you think that it is just that all-star push? Because sometimes it seems like Ben does just need an extra incentive to go play, and then he'll take nights off or whatever. Or just like Joel Embiid has taken his game to a next level this season, has Ben Simmons put it together mentally over this last stretch where this is going to continue and propel the Sixers?
Yeah, man. Great question, by the way. That's kind of how I was looking at it in my head as well. But, with Ben Simmons, it's interesting because, he's coming off last season. He had the knee injury that kept him out of the playoffs. So it might have just taken him a little while to get acquainted with Doc's system, with the new players, Seth and Danny Green, all these shooters. So maybe it just took him a little while to come around. I personally think, and mind you, I'm a Ben supporter. I think that Ben has a really high ceiling if he can just put his mental together, like you said, that he said he's figured it out. And when you see him dunk on guys and then scream in their face, I'm seeing a different Ben, and it looks like he's flipped the switch. I mean, even the way he drives to the rack, it seems like he's figured out the 2 steps.
Yes, the slowing down.
The control. And you see it with Giannis, the guys that know how to get to the rack, Donovan Mitchell. Once you get that figured out, James Harden, those steps getting to the rim, and he's getting fouled. He's hitting his free throws. I think that he's figured it out. I think I won't say figured, but he's figuring it out. And I think it's a switch he's turned on. This year with the All-Star game for Ben, if I'm him, I wouldn't worry about it, man. Just play your best basketball. Yeah, like it doesn't mean anything. Win the Defensive Player of the Year if you want to win accolades. You know what I mean? And that's the other side of it. The defense, the steals, the assists, the rebounds are still there. He's still putting up those numbers while scoring higher. The losses are concerning. You have to wonder if it is, if it has something to do with that. But no, I take it as a positive all the way. We wanted him to score, and he's scoring.
Well, I'll throw this towards Gint too, but the thing about the losses, I agree. I think it's the one game was without Joel. The bench, no shake. Like the bench has been really bad. And when you look at it, he's shooting efficiently. So it's not like he's taking a crazy amount of shots and he's shooting a low percentage. And that's what's contributing to the losses, like empty possessions. His assist numbers are still high. So he's still getting others involved. He's still playing really good defense. So I agree. I don't think the losses and the production are similar right now. I think that gets figured out. But Gint, let me throw this to you. A, which side do you take? Is it the mental? Is it the extra incentive in this last month before the All-Star voting? And B, and Scott, then you can answer it after. How much credit of that goes to Ben Simmons, and how much credit of this goes to Doc and Sam Cassell and the coaching staff? Because you've unlocked now. This coaching staff theoretically has unlocked MVP Embiid. It's theoretically unlocked all-star 21-point per game Tobias Harris. And now it's unlocking aggressive Ben Simmons every single night. What's your take there? Yeah.
Today back here, he's making a push for the All-Star game. I mean, I definitely think you really don't want to believe that. That would be a reason for him to start pulling some good games together. I also think the aggressiveness last night was, and I believe there was one more game, because when we went on that 17-0 run without Embiid, Ben looked unreal. Everything was spread out. You had like Yerson Ilyasova playing the 5 a lot, so he was able to kind of get more to what he wanted. But what we're seeing now with Embiid is where you start to get really excited for the aggressiveness, because you never saw it with Embiid, but now you have, and you're starting to see what they both can do where they're playing off each other. Now, like you said, it hasn't really resulted in wins, but I'm going to believe the fact that if he continues to be aggressive, wins will eventually start coming. Yeah. And, I mean, to bring up the coaching staff, I think you're right. You're getting the best out of these guys. And I mentioned to you guys before about how I wonder how Joel Embiid feels towards Brett Brown for the beginning of his career. And, I mean, clearly it's been there. So with Brett Brown here, you didn't really get it. So I think the same thing with Ben. I think this coaching staff is – one, I think the players are getting more – I don't want to say accountability, but like when you saw the Warriors went on that run, like I mentioned earlier, it seemed like the players had so much power. And not to the point where they could walk all over the coaching staff, but it's like you see Doc a lot where the other team goes on a huge run, and it's not a timeout, it's not a sub, it's figure it out yourselves because like we need to learn this. So I think these guys are molding together much well because of it, and I also think it's making them play more confidently.
Scott, what do you think about the coaching staff unlocking Ben mentally, or is that just a Ben maturing thing like Joel has talked about?
I think it's both, man. It's one of those, again, right in the middle there. You hope that Ben is just improving on his own and just putting in the work. But at the same time, you come with championship experience in Doc Rivers, a guy that has worked with guys like Rajon Rondo, who is similar to Ben, doesn't prefer to score the basketball. You know what I mean? He prefers to get everybody else involved. And, you look at a guy like Sam Cassell, he made a living off attacking and being that guy. So, these guys have a plethora of experience to share with Ben, a plethora of, mentality to have in the game to share with Ben. And I do think it's paying off. You mentioned, the losses that come with Ben scoring. I thought, last night was an interesting example because Ben kept the Sixers in the game in the first half, and he left the door open there for the Sixers to win. it ended up coming down to the end of the game. Embiid missed a couple shots there, and nobody's blaming Embiid. Like, obviously, he's carried us all season. But, those are shots that Ben usually hits. Or not Ben, Joel usually hits those shots at the end of the game, those fadeaways that he was getting. And they just didn't go down last night. And, if he hits those, we probably do win that game, even through a Chris Boucher annihilation on us with three-pointers. And he was even blocking some shots out there. He's a pretty decent player that, for an undrafted guy. That's pretty crazy. Toronto always seems to find these guys, in the late rounds, undrafted, and just turn them into studs. It's so weird there. And that's, the opposite of the end. I know we didn't talk about, like a Kyle Lowry potential move, but, if you give them a guy like Matisse or Maxey, I mean, imagine what they could turn that type of potential into, compared to what they've already done with their current players. But yeah, I think coaching has to be, the number one thing this season. And I guess I would ask you this question, reflecting back to last season specifically. I saw this stat come out, I think we're actually one game worse than what we were last season at this same point. And, we've been kind of raving about this season. It's been fun. We're number one in the East. How do you guys feel in respect to that? Do you carry that with any weight at all? Does that matter at all?
Yeah, I've said, like, it's weird. They're like at the 27 game mark, we were better last year than we were this year, and the same thing now. But this year feels different. Obviously, you're in the middle of a COVID season also. So you dropped, 3 games in a row because of COVID? You know what I'm saying? I don't know, man. No, it doesn't really hold any weight. I think that what you're seeing out of Joel Embiid and Tobias Harris this year, compiled with aggressive Ben lately, compared to what you got from the team last year, just screams more of a playoff run. And this team, because what did we hear last year? Bully ball. This team is built for the playoffs, blah, blah, blah. And then there's the complete opposite. I think this team, obviously, we're going to get to trade rumors and the bench does need work. But I think when you look at the starting 5, I think this team is more built for the postseason than anything else with the way they're, because some nights their defense doesn't look that great and they're not running teams off the 3-point line. They're giving up a lot of threes. I think in the defense that changes. I think unlocking Joel and Tobias in the half-court game and having Ben not be a liability in the half-court game, hopefully anymore, I think that this year feels a lot better, even though the record compared to last year isn't the same. But let me throw this back at you guys, because Scotty, you mentioned champion in terms of Doc Rivers and the coaching staff. How much weight into some guys unlocking their potential right now or their games right now would you attribute to champion type players and veteran players in Danny Green and Dwight Howard? Danny Green's looking for his third straight. Dwight Howard's coming off one with the Lakers, partnered with Danny Green. Beginning of the year, after games, how many times did we see Dwight coming out with Ben or other players getting up extra shots and extra work? How much of that does it attribute to, Ben, like, I guess you could call it waking up right now?
You want to go first, Ken?
Go ahead.
Got it? All right. Yeah, I think it the same with the coaching. I think you have to accept that that's weighing in on this team. Dwight Howard, man, he brings like a toughness and a almost a cocky but confident, just that personality on the bench, and I think that allows them to have fun. And that was the one thing watching the playoffs last year against the Celtics. This team wasn't having fun. And I know Ben wasn't there, but, you looked at what they were putting out on the court. I mean, you have Al Horford in the, same 5-foot space as Joel Embiid. That's not fun for Joel Embiid. And it's not fun for Al Horford. I mean, Brett Brown was setting those guys up for the disaster. And I think it's got to be refreshing, seeing this year. But to your point, that's kind of why I do just want to keep Danny Green as like a bench piece, man, just for that experience and the ability to knock down shots in times where, maybe he's coming in and he hasn't played the whole game and he can just hit shots. I think he is just getting too many minutes in our rotation, but I do love the experience that Danny Green brings. And them coming right over from the Lakers, obviously that's gonna influence these guys.
Right.
I think Joel's taken to it. I think Ben Simmons is taken to it as well.
Well, the sucky part is I agree with you. For whatever reason, as much as he can bother me sometimes throughout the course of a game, I do like Danny Green for his role, so to speak.
Yeah.
Like you said, sometimes it could be too much, but I do like him. The only issue is if you're trying to make not a big move, but a bigger move than some expect, Danny Green is going to be thrown in simply for the money purposes. And that's the sucky part. It's like you can't acquire Kyle Lowry and keep Danny Green and move him to the bench. It's just not a possibility. So that's something we can get into in a couple minutes. It's like, would you rather that kind of move, or would you rather keep Danny and look towards the buyout or a George Hill type trade and stuff like that? But again, what do you think about the Danny Green and Dwight Howard point?
Yeah, you and I have talked about it a lot, saying we definitely think it was important. And Dwight's been awesome, even though sometimes he is just frustrating to watch basketball player. And I'll tell you right now, if there was a way to acquire DeMarcus Cousins and Dwight Howard had to go, I would get my Pontiac and up if I had to. But and the same thing with Danny Green. He's just that guy this year that everyone seems to always point the finger at when he has a bad night. It's, Danny Green's got to go. He's not giving us what we thought. This isn't 40% Danny Green. It's like Danny Green last year struggled, as most players do next to LeBron. I don't think anyone thought Danny Green was going to come in here and shoot 42% from three and guard an important piece on the other side of the ball. It's just not going to happen at his age. You're either most nights you're probably going to get one or the other. You're going to get one side and probably not the other side. So they're awesome, and they've definitely probably are teaching guys a lot, but I wouldn't put too much stock in it.
All right. This is just one side note that I have to get out because I agree. Before the season, during most of the season, I've said Dwight Howard, to me, was the most important all-season acquisition, and I'm not taking anything away from that anymore. And I agree with Scott. He brings a toughness. He's the best backup center Joel's had. Hopefully in the playoffs, it pays out dividends, everything. But this is like just comments down here. Dwight is so frustrating, but credit to him for doing the dirty work on the boards and keeping the ball alive. Look, all I want to say is I love the toughness he brings, the offensive rebounding, the rebounding in general, the rim protection, everything like that. The stupid offensive fouls, I'll live with, okay? Especially when he's not starting and he can play limited minutes behind Joel and use up his fouls and body people. However, Dwight Howard should never touch the basketball offensively unless it's a oop or an open layup, okay? I watch Matisse Thybulle constantly try to run a pick and roll and force the ball into Dwight Howard, and it has yet to work. Dwight, if you're watching, I know you are because you're a fan of the show. I'm kidding, but if you get this message from me, listen, if you get an offensive rebound and you are not wide open to stuff it back down, please, for the love of God, kick the ball back out because you're not doing this team any favors by throwing one off the top of the glass like a rocket, and you're not doing any favors by getting to the free throw line because you shoot like 45% from the line, okay?
Dude, just sorry, you know me.
Sorry, I had to get that out. I still love you, Dwight. You're a big piece to this team right now, but please.
There's got to be a YouTube video or something. What is the reason there's a space between his foot and the free throw line? Do you notice that?
Dude, yeah, well, dude, he moves. He'll move 8 feet back. He'll move right up to the line.
It makes no sense to me.
First of all, because the man has no touch, Gint. I don't know if you see it.
So you back up?
Yeah, I guess because he shoots it hard as shit. So he tries to just get enough under it. I don't know, dude. I think last night he actually hit a pair. I almost passed out.
Yeah, man. That I attribute some of that, annoyingness of Dwight to Doc Rivers as well.
Yeah, I agree. I was
stop running the offense through him.
Yes.
Like, he's not Joel Embiid. Like, let's stop it. But I do think, a lot of the annoying moments came from the games without Joel Embiid there, where he's getting like 25 plus minutes. And like, we cannot see that. You know what I mean?
Dude,
I think, depending on what, and we'll get into moves, but depending on what DeMarcus Cousins market is like, if you could bring him in and keep Dwight. I mean, DeMarcus Cousins, I haven't watched much of him this year, but when we played Houston, he was hitting the three ball pretty easily. He was stroking it. So if he could just bring that stretch big type of ball to the team,
and
I think that would help a lot.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
agree. Gint's all over that move.
Dude,
All right. So before we get to moves, I just want to talk about where my MVP vote would go right now, and that is Mr. 2-1. I mean, dude, he's averaging over 30 and 11 right now. 50 burger on Friday night. Like I said, his worst game of the year. I remember we came on the show after like the Kings game, the first game of the West Coast trip, and he had 25 and whatever and 6 assists. And we were like, okay, this was his worst game of the year. That was a 25-point night. Last night, to me, was solidified his worst game of the season, and he had 25 and 17. Scott, I'll throw this to you, or again, I'll throw this one to you first. What's the difference? Can you put your finger on a difference you're seeing from the big fella this year? Like maturity-wise, game-wise, like where he's posted up. I mean, what's the difference that his slow nights are 25?
There's a CVS receipt of reasons, to be honest with you. I mean, he's able to identify double teams so much better. I forget what game it was. It was some type of close game. He threw that cross-court pass to hit Tobias Harris right in the numbers, and he drilled a corner three to put the game out of reach, essentially. I mean, identifying double teams is huge. I mean, personnel around him, I think this is the first time where they've actually said, let's really spread this thing out with, I was going to say consistent jump shooters, but after last night, I guess now who knows if they're consistent anymore. Not Robert Covington and Dario Saric and those guys. So, I mean, he's identifying double teams. He's definitely playing with the chip on his shoulder after last season. I think you can clearly tell he was not happy with what last year was, which I don't think anyone, player or fans-wise, was happy last year. It was brutal to watch. But, I mean, I don't want to take up all the reasons, but he just looks like he has when the Yankees were talking about this revenge tour, and they still didn't win the World Series, this looks like a revenge tour for Joel Embiid. Like, this looks like he's writing on the schedule, who he wants. Wendell Carter's not a big name. I don't know what was in him the other night, but he looked like he just wanted to destroy Wendell Carter.
He said, "You think I need Zach LaVine? Here you go."
Yeah.
Scott, what can you point your finger on and say this is a difference I'm seeing in the big man this year?
It has to be consistency and conditioning. The ability to do it the whole game. He's taking over games. You saw it with the 50 burger, man. I mean, that was insane. But I think he's just kind of similar to what you said again. He's just kind of figured it out. He's figuring out who he is and what he can do that nobody else can really do anything about. When you look at guys trying to guard him, it's like good luck. Similar to, I know you guys remember Dirk Nowitzki,
yep.
7-footer that can just stroke it from mid-range, stroke it from three-point line, and can drive the basketball to the rim. He's athletic. It's ridiculous. And on top of his 7'2" frame, he's also wide. He's big. And his touch is better than, some forwards. It's ridiculous. So, all of that combined with him figuring out how to just play. And it is, having guys like Seth Curry on the floor, Danny Green that can spread the offense out. Tobias is playing a lot better. That makes it easier for Embiid. But, Embiid, a lot of it is just him and what he can do and the matchup nightmare that he presents. There's nobody in the league that I think, when Embiid is hitting his shots, when he's getting to the free throw line, there's nobody that can stop him. No. And I think that's where you distinguish him as the MVP, let alone the fact of how bad the Sixers are when he doesn't play. Nobody can stop him on a given night. Against the Lakers, up until LeBron pushed him in the midair, he was the best player on the court. A lot of people will call me crazy for saying that, AD, LeBron's out there. Joel Embiid was the best player on that court up until LeBron pushes him in midair and hurts his back. And every game this season, it's looked like that. Yeah. And that's what the MVP is. The only thing that's going to hold him back is that load management. People are going to call him out for that. But, at the end of the day, whatever. I would prioritize his health. We need. I'll take a finals MVP. I'll take a finals MVP at the end of the day. But yeah, I think it's conditioning, the shape he's in, and just mentally figuring it out, knowing that he's that guy. He is the MVP. He knows it, and his confidence is on another level.
I agree with everything you guys just touched on. I think there's all true. And like Gint said, there's a freaking CVS receipt list of why. And others that, like Gint, you mentioned the double team. And there's things that he's doing. He's recognizing it earlier and quicker. And he's passing out of it much better. But he's also keeping his dribble alive. Like when he's in the corner and the double team comes, he keeps his dribble alive and dribbles back out towards the top of the key and kind of resets the offense instead of turning the ball over. Last night was the first time I watched him struggle against a double team a little bit because he was trying to dribble through a double team. You saw the ball get ripped away. It's going the other way. That happened a couple times. He falls on the ground. He hasn't done that this year. So, and I don't expect that to happen many more times this year. So, that's one area that Nick Nurse's defense did give him a little bit of fits. So that's one thing. A or B, the mid-level jumper. We've talked about it multiple times. It's gotten to the point where it's knockdown. Like it's knockdown this year. Okay. He's 7 foot, 7'1", 2, whatever you want to call him. His footwork is unfreaking, dude. The Euro step against Chicago.
Yeah, Euro step.
Are you joking?
God,
bro, he took
so
it the
dirty.
length of the floor and then Euro'd for a layup. And then was it the same game or was it last night? And I forget when it was, but he was posting up and like on the block, and I think Toby or Ben gave him the feed. And while the ball was in air, he was already turning his body, caught it, and laid it right in. Do you know the play I'm talking about? Like the footwork is unbelievable. The only other thing I can point my finger to, Scott, you talked on conditioning. It's the length of the game, but it's also he's no longer trailing plays a lot to set up the half court. He is a lot of times, the first or second player down the floor offensively and setting up and getting his spot in the low post. That's a huge difference so far. Before, sluggish, trailing Ben while he's bringing the ball up. Then he has to get down there and a couple seconds already off the shot clock. That's not happening anymore. So whatever it is, all the things we just named that you want to say, oh, that's true, that's not true, whatever, they're all playing a key factor into Joel Embiid, and it's him, and it's his coaching staff, it's the scheme, it's the spacing, it's everything, and it's been a lot of fun to watch. And I guess all we could say is knock on wood that the big fella stays healthy for the second half of the season, and we get this version of him in the postseason. You get this version of Joel Embiid in the postseason, and that's a scary thought.
Yeah.
So,
and the other thing I wanted to point out before you close on that segment was, you also see it with his conditioning, as in, not settling for 3-point shots. He used to get sluggish. He'll just start pulling up for three, kind of to just get his breath back. But now you see it, especially with that 50-point game, and you're seeing it a lot more down the stretch. He's the closer. And, he goes to the rack. He's trying to get fouled late in games. Like, it's not just pulling up anymore. Obviously, he can if he needs to. Yeah. But I did want to point that out as well, just not taking the lazy shots anymore. He's actually being very selective in trying to get to the rim. So, great stuff, man, from Embiid. It's wonderful to watch.
It's awesome. So, with all that being said, let's look at the team as a whole. Scott, they're 20-11 through 31 games. First place in the East, like I said, over Brooklyn by half a game still. And I've been a huge advocator on this show of telling people, like, when they would lose one game without Joel or without Ben, it's, oh, my God. And, just enjoy the ride. They're the number one seed through almost half of the season now. And they're going to make the postseason. They're going to be one of the top seeds in the Eastern Conference. Just enjoy the ride. They can contend. You get MVP and beat everything. Just have fun with it. However, Daryl Morey does have a little bit more work to do. And I can't sit here and honestly believe that this is the team you're going to see in the postseason. The core, yes. The Kyle Lowry rumors are picking up a little more steam. I know the Jump tweeted it out earlier that Kevin O'Connor, I believe, said that Daryl Morey is, looking at a bigger move still. He's being very active. The Kyle Lowry thing is, starting to come into its own a little bit. I don't know if that happens. Buyout market. The dude, I can't even pronounce the forward's name from the Kings that can stretch the floor a little bit. Belechka, whatever it is. I don't even want I don't even want him on the Sixers because I'll butcher his name every time I have to talk about him. I'm kidding, but He's out there. George Hill and DeLon Wright's names were thrown out there as backup point guards. So there's really only holes to fill on the bench, in my opinion. Scott, what do you think happens come close to trade deadline time? There's still like a month until the deadline or whatever, I believe. What do you think happens? What holes does the team have? Like backup four, I think, is one that everyone has said and agreed upon. What other holes do you think? And who's realistic? Kyle Lowry, I think, is starting to become realistic. Even though if it's Toronto's standpoint, they started out the season really bad, but they have a better record than Boston now. And they're starting to pick up some steam, and they're not going to tank. So it would take a lot to get Lowry. LaVine, I know we all want him. How realistic is it? I don't know. So what do you think?
So I think LaVine has played him out of realistic. He's on another level. So I think it would take too much to get a guy like that. Lowry is realistic. I just think you do not, give a boatload for him. You got to keep it reasonable. There's no reason to panic right now and make that move. I don't think it needs to be made out of desperation. So something reasonable. I'm not giving up both Maxey and Thibault. And then I think, as far as the need for if you want to call Lowry a backup point guard, he would start. But he would run with the second unit a lot, I would imagine. It depends how much you're sold on Tyrese Maxey as well. He could use some experience. I don't know what's kind of going on with that. Maybe they just don't want to throw him out there and kind of ruin him. You know what I mean? Ruin his confidence. But Maxey's a guy that I really like. But he just seems to getting less and less minutes in that rotation. But Lowry, go ahead.
I just want to throw this point to you, like as you're making your point. I think he's a perfect fit, to be honest. Like, he's another ball handler, which they need. Clutch shooter, can spread the floor as well, but doesn't need the ball. Championship experience, everything like that. Can run the second unit with Shake, everything. But, like you said, I wouldn't give up too much, but you know what it's going to take. It's going to take at least Green and Mike Scott for the money, some picks, and I would imagine Maxey or Thibault. Like, I guess what I'm asking you to is, does Kyle Lowry, as much of a perfect fit as I think he is, does he propel the Sixers to championship level right now? Because if he doesn't, I don't know if you can do it. But if he does, you kind of have to pull the trigger. But like you said, we already don't have a deep bench. We've been discussing that all show. So does Lowry in the starting lineup overcome Danny Green, Mike Scott? Not that Mike Scott really throws in anything there, but Danny Green, Mike Scott, and Matisse Thybulle, let's say, or Tyrese Maxey. Can he overcome that?
So to your point there, I think where I would close the door at is if you have to give up Danny. Well, you would have to put Danny Green in there for money reasons. But if you have to throw Thybulle in there, I think you have to close the door on that. The perimeter defense is already a problem. So we can't afford to give up two perimeter defenders in Danny Green and Matisse Thybulle. I know Danny Green's older, but he can still provide defense in spots. You know what I mean? So in that case, no, I'm probably not doing it. I don't think, if you give up two bench players for Lowry, two guys that are, over 20 minutes in the rotation right now, Lowry's not going to be able to give you 35 a night. No. He's an older guy. He is on an expiring contract. That's a lot, especially if you're going to throw in some draft picks. Now, I think if you can keep it based around draft picks being the ultimate prize, and throw in a Mike Scott and Danny Green and not lose Thybulle, or Maxey. If that's the thing you mentioned as well. The Raptors are no longer desperate. Yeah. They don't need to get rid of him now.
Right.
But the one thing is they've gone on this stretch without him. They've won 6 games in a row with Lowry, out with an injury.
Yeah.
So maybe they are getting comfortable with that younger unit, get him off the books, get some young, assets in return while you can still stay in contention. They obviously can compete. But it doesn't seem like it's desperate on either side now. So I know it's getting talked about, but I don't know how realistic it really is.
So,
go ahead.
I just want to throw it to Gint real quick before we move on to other targets. Gint, Kyle Lowry, Villanova man, I know you would cry if he became a Philadelphia 76er. Can he, in your mind, does he propel them to a championship content? Like, I know we've talked about how with the way Embiid's playing and on there, the number one seed, they literally are contenders right now. But when you look at this bench and scoring and all, if that phone call and that trade goes through, does he instantly make you okay? We can win a championship or not? Because if you're Daryl Morey, that's the only question that has to be asked. And then I don't think really what you have to if you have to give up Maxey or Matisse, you just do it because it's okay. You can win a championship this year. But if it doesn't check that box, don't do it.
Yeah. I'd love to say yes with Lowry because, like you said, I love Lowry. But when you make that move for Lowry and you basically insert him in the starting lineup and you take Danny Green out of the starting lineup, you get a lot smaller. And if you look at Milwaukee, Brooklyn, Boston, like you don't want to get smaller. James Harden can't be guarded by little guards. Kevin Durant obviously can't be guarded by little guards. Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Giannis, Drew Holiday, Chris Middleton. So, like, Kyle Lowry's a better player than Danny Green, obviously. That's not even need to be said. But I don't know how much, like, quote-unquote smaller you want to get. Because, I mean, James, like, you look at how you're going to have to match up with Brooklyn. And I know, like, that's not the only team you have to beat to get to where you want to be. But it's one of the teams. And it's like James Harden, Kevin Durant, you have Ben Simmons. Can't guard both of them. So, I mean, you'd think Danny Green would be like that second guy right now that essentially would guard the other one that Ben Simmons isn't guarding, which I don't think you could say the same with Kyle Lowry and Seth Curry if you were to move Danny Green. So I want to say, yeah, we obviously get better probably right now, but in terms of matchups, I don't know if Kyle Lowry fills that void the best.
Scott, what do you think?
Yeah, I guess the counter to that would be you would have to have something lined up as far as buyouts or, some other minor trade where you're just giving up, bottom of the bench guy like Ferguson and like a second round pick for a bench filler. It would have to be something like that. Or, maybe send Lowry and a guy like DeAndre Bembry or, Stanley Johnson, another depth piece that could bring just simply defense with Lowry. I think something like that would make it work, but I think you're spot on it. Lowry alone is not going to do it. And, especially when you're giving up Green and if you have to give up Matisse, you can't afford to do that. But if there's ways around it without, throwing Matisse in there and you can get not just Lowry, then I think you can make it work. But then you're talking about a lot of changes to the roster, a lot of changes to the rotation, and having to refigure it out when you haven't even figured it out really with the guys that you have right now. So yeah, it might end up being the better play to go after some smaller targets.
Yeah, I see some comments here that are saying I take Levine over Lowry. Levine.
Yeah, so would I.
Scotty kind of said,
too,
I think we all would, but Levine kind of isn't reasonable at this moment, averaging 28, 29. It would take a lot to get to
a lot. You're looking at probably like Green, Matisse, Maxey,
three first rounds.
Yeah, 3 firsts. Yeah. So I don't know about that.
I just think
a little too much.
At this point, to make a move for a player that would be regarded as a definite starter, like if you look at Houston and Victor Oladipo, who apparently wants to play in Miami, but they don't seem to want to trade him to Miami, probably because, I mean, who wants to give something that they want in terms of GM? It's just like you have to look at these teams that are vulnerable at this point, and like you said, Toronto's not vulnerable anymore. They're talking about bringing in Andre Drummond. They're not talking about selling the ship. You know what I mean? They're only trying to improve. So I don't know if I tweeted the other night after Joel Embiid had 50. I was like, "Go get Lowry! Like, let's do this. Let's just ride this ship. We don't know how many times this is going to be like this for Embiid, so let's just do it." But like, it might not be the smartest play. That's why I'm glad I'm not the GM. But
yeah,
here's a name. Chris says, "What do you guys think about Patty Mills?" I don't know why it's not allowing me to pull up his comment, but
yeah.
All right.
I think there it is. You were like lagging for a second.
So, what do you guys think about Patty Mills? Am I good yet?
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Go ahead.
You go.
All right. Yeah. I was gonna say, Patty Mills. I mean, he brings shooting. He brings experience again. I'm not sure how he is on the defensive end, but it can't be much worse than some of the other guys on the squad. So he could lead a second unit for sure. Right. And I think that's what you're looking at with a guy like him, George Hill. You're looking for experienced vets, can hit big shots, and can run an offense. So yeah, Patty Mills makes sense. He's not going to cost you a ton.
So the funny thing to me is, when I looked at holes for this team, like backup point guard never came to mind because it's like, all right, we have Shake. But when you actually think about it, like when the DeLon Wright and George Hill rumors came out, I'm like, okay, well, Shake can play off ball. We know that. So if you run a second unit of Patty Mills and Shake or George Hill and Shake or wherever you want to go, I think it works a lot better than what you're doing right now. You have Matisse there who can be defensively, who's there for defense. And then like you said, Scott, like if Doc can figure this out to where, you're not staggering all three of your core off the floor and you're staggering them more. And then maybe Toby's out there with Dwight, Toby, Hill, Shake, and Matisse. That's a much better five. Also, when we're looking at this, what pieces are we going to have? And when it gets to playoff rotations, look, Doc Rivers isn't Brett Brown. Doc Rivers isn't going to run 10 guys off in the rotation. I think realistically, you're looking at 8 with Doc, 8, maybe 9. So that's another thing we have to take into account. Like, okay, if we hit buyout market or, we trade Ferguson in a few seconds for Hill and then we pick up a 3-and-D guy, well, there's only so many minutes that are going to go around in the postseason. So I guess the only point is, okay, who can take the minutes of Furkan Korkmaz and Isaiah Joe? Who can score for you off the bench? That's what needs to check the box for me.
Yeah. And you hit it right there. I mean, you just got to get it to the point where you don't have Dwight Howard, Matisse Thybulle, like Tyrese Maxey and Korkmaz on the floor at the same time. It's killing us. It's literally losing us games. So you just got to get guys, like you said, Korkmaz, Scott, Scott had the beehive, whatever, Mike Scott hive. But, I mean, this guy's useless on the court, man.
Yeah, if I have to watch the Hive put up another jumper, I'm going to lose it. Like, and the thing is, he's not shy, bro. Like, when he plays, he's not shy to chuck it.
That lights as green as this shirt, dude.
It's so annoying, man. I swear.
I guess when I look back up 4, like you said, Scott, and then someone that can score, and then those guys, along with Matisse, Dwight, and Shake, take over the minutes you would possibly even have to put Furkan. Like, I don't think there are a lot of moves off. It's not like they need 3 or 4 bench pieces. You need 2 bench pieces, I'd say, that are just serviceable. The 4 can stretch the floor a little bit and rebound, and you have a guard that can handle the ball and score. I think that's what you're missing right now. And then those guys take away the Furkan Korkmaz minutes, the Mike Scott minutes, the bad rotations, everything like that. And, as much as we're saying about Doc and these rotations, I truly believe you're not getting that in the postseason. Even with the shortening rotations, I think Doc staggers the minutes a lot better where, okay, Ben's going to come off first because Shea can come in and play for a little bit for Ben, and then Ben's going to come back in at the 4 for Toby or the 5, whatever he wants to do. And, and I think that's how he kind of figures it out.
Yeah, I think you are right in that sense. The idea of DeLon Wright and Wayne Ellington, if you could get that together for a minimal package, I think that would be perfect. You mentioned the 4. I'm not going to try his name either. Out in Sacramento,
Belichica or whatever.
Yeah, Belichica. Yeah,
he
would bring us that stretch 4. Exactly what they need. But yeah, Paul Reed is another one that was mentioned in the comments. I don't know how you guys feel. He's hooping, man, but he's too young, to just throw out there. He doesn't have enough experience.
There you go, Scott. I'll ask you this. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think? No, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. I was going to say Blake Griffin's interesting.
Buyout?
Buyout only. You can't.
I can't imagine Blake Griffin being off the bench. That's the only issue.
Yeah, it seemed like he had a problem coming off the bench in Detroit. So if he had a problem with that, he's probably not going to want to come to us. I don't know about that whole Ben and all that history there either. But Blake's interesting. He would kind of fit what they need, if he could, accept his role. But I just wonder if he's willing to accept that.
So before we wrap up here, guys,
Let me ask one question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So when we talked about the Harden move, apparently the rumor was Maxey was too much. They would get rid of Ben, but they wanted to find a deal where Maxey wasn't the deal breaker. Like, for some reason, that was the rumor that came out. Don't know if it was true. Have no clue. But my question is to you guys, would you move Maxey, essentially? Because here's my thing. When we drafted Maxey, we were like, oh, my God, this is the best value we could have gotten at this pick. He's the best player available. But in reality, he was not the fit you wanted to draft. You would have rather drafted a shooter, like if you the name was Tyrell Terry, or there was a couple other guys out there, Desmond Bane, that were shooters that were still available. But I mean, you took the most promise.
You took the best player, yeah.
So now you have the most promise, and if you're telling me you can make a move to give yourself the best chance to win a championship, what you're holding on to this 20-year-old kid that has looked good in moments but hasn't shown you outstanding. He hasn't showed you LaMelo Ball. He hasn't showed you Anthony Edwards and James Wiseman. So that's my question to you guys is, where's the line where you move him? Do you move him for only a Kyle Lowry or a Victor Oladipo, or would you move him for a PJ Tucker and Ben McLemore type move?
Definitely not the last one you just threw out there. The Lowry one, like, he's not going to be the deal breaker for me. Like, where if it's like, okay, I'll trade you Danny Green, Mike Scott, a second rounder, and then Maxey. And I'm like, no, not Maxey. However, like, if it's 1 year of Kyle Lowry and then he's not coming back, do you guys do that? I don't know. I don't know. I'm not sitting here saying Tyrese is untouchable, but the deal has to be right in my mind. Because I'm not going to go for 1 year of Kyle Lowry in which the Nets are trying to win this year. You still have to go through Giannis in the Bucks. You still have LeBron and AD out west if you make it there, all that stuff. And then watch Tyrese Maxey tear it up in Toronto for years to come.
Yeah, that's the kicker.
It's weird.
Yeah.
I think it depends on the length of what you get back.
Yeah. Tyrese, I mean, I think, you start the season with that thought that you can't trade this guy as your 21st pick. Like, that's before you see what Joel is doing and what Tobias is doing and what Ben is doing, where they're giving you this window. And, I think that's what kind of has turned the corner for me. I mean, obviously Maxey had that 39-point game, when all the starters were out. He showed potential through the roof. He's a point guard and he's a baller. And I think that's what excites people a lot about him, is that he just plays and it seems like he has fun. But if the right deal came along, like you said, Tyrese Maxey's not going to be my breaking point. Matisse Thybulle would probably be my breaking point in that trade. So, just to put that in perspective, I think Matisse, with that being said, Matisse is in the lineup. Like, he has
Matisse can help you more now. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I wouldn't get rid of both of them. It would hurt giving up Tyrese Maxey. I won't lie to you there, but I think Lowry, he's bringing experience. He's bringing, defense. He's bringing consistent shooting. He can score. He's one of those guys that another ball handler, can run an offense. I mean, he takes charges like no other. He's one of the best. You get him, a guy who can draw fouls just like Joel Embiid on the same team. I mean, I can't pass it up.
Scott, you're talking to me into, like, I'm looking at these comments, I'm listening to what I just said, and it's like, yeah, for 1 year of Kyle Lowry with everything else out there in the East, it's like, do I really want to do that? But then at the same time, these comments, I'm like, I'm tired of saying not for 1 year. If 1 year can help me win a championship, that is the end goal, right? And it's not like you're selling the farm for 1 year.
Right, exactly. That's the key.
How much do you invest in that?
And Lowry, he's making close to $40 million this year. Maybe he does take a hometown discount. You get him in Philly. He's playing for the Sixers, his hometown. Maybe he's like, man, you know what? I'll just kind of stick with these guys.
Win another ring here. Yeah.
Yeah, their championship window here. Embiid's playing out of his mind. Ben Simmons out of his mind. Let's run it back. I'll take a hometown discount. Maybe. I'm not saying he would, but maybe. Maybe if you get that type of, discussion going before the trade, you can make that trade. But, it is. I will say it is kind of far-fetched at this point in the season. You're getting close to midway, and it's not a lot of time to get him acclimated. So that would be the one kicker there.
One thing Scott said that was really it was Thibault would be your line rather than Maxey. And I'm wondering in these calls with Daryl Morey, who's his line? You know what I mean? Because apparently the Harden deal was Tyrese Maxey. I'm not giving up Tyrese Maxey. James Harden would have been a Sixer apparently if Tyrese Maxey wasn't involved. So, and I feel like a lot of Sixers fans are on the other side of that, are on not your side of the fence where they don't want to, they won't lose Maxey, but they're okay with losing Thibault, which I'm on your side as well, because I think with these wings in this Eastern Conference that Matisse helps us a ton and gives us something, especially if your starting lineup is going to consist of guys like Seth Curry and Danny Green's getting older, not being able to guard as versatile guys. Because we saw in the last year in the playoff series, Matisse was obviously outmatched against Jason Tatum, but he gave a fight, and he gave a fight that you can only ask out of a guy that comes off your bench. And like you said earlier, we don't know if Matisse will ever get inserted into the starting lineup because to show something on the offensive side of the ball, it's not going to happen. But that was really interesting to hear you say that, because I'm on that side. Because I love Maxey, and I love 19-year-old that, like you said, can put the ball on the ground and can attack the rim. But right now on this team,
first of all, talk about a green light. Okay, that's the one thing I told you again. I like the kid a lot too. Okay, he needs to shoot a little bit less when he's on the floor. Like, he comes out and
take some wild shots.
Within 10 minutes, he's got 8 to 10 shots already. Like, dude, pump the brakes. And some of that's out of necessity because of who else is out there on the floor, who can create offense. Absolutely. So last thing I want to do with you guys is we're talking playoff rotations because that's the end goal, right? That's where with these moves we have to get to is how do they help us in the postseason and win a championship. So Gint and I did this last week for a second. Let's say Doc has a 9-man rotation in the playoffs. It could only be 8, but let's say 9 just to give us another spot. Who, Scott, is a lock for you on the current roster? And then when you look at, then you can go like by need. So you would figure you have your starting 5, right? And then let's say Shake, Dwight, Matisse, right? Yeah. That's 8. So that's where the issues come in, right? Like, okay, yeah, they need more scoring off the bench. They need a backup 4 off the bench, but in reality, there's maybe one more spot left. Unless Doc just doesn't care and he'll run 10 guys in the postseason, but I can't see that being the case.
Yeah.
But it's also a matchup situation, right? So like maybe Matisse, maybe in the first round against, I don't know, let's say Orlando, Matisse doesn't have to play that much, right? And the other guys do. But then against Boston or Brooklyn, against those wings, then Matisse's role gets elevated for defensive minutes, and so on and so forth. I don't know. It's going to be interesting. Who's a lock in your mind, and how many spots do you see open for moves?
Yeah, I think you hit it right on the head. I think 9 is probably as wide as we're going to get there. Because you're not going to see these lineups where you have, a full 5 bench players out on the court at the same time. That's not going to happen in the playoffs. But yeah, I think Thibault is a lock in there. You look at that Boston series from last year. If Thibault could just not have to guard Jason Tatum, if Ben Simmons is there and Thibault can guard either Kemba or Jaylen Brown, I think he fares a lot better against those guys. Jason Tatum's one of a kind, and with Ben Simmons, I think I'm not going to say anything. We'll leave that combo, but Ben Simmons going to give him a little bit of
Hold on.
tougher matchup.
I just have so much spinning in my head in this conversation right now. And I have 2 things I wanted out. Now, obviously, if the starting 5 continues to play well throughout the regular season and everything like that, it's really hard to do this. But like in the postseason, would it be a smarter idea for Doc to start Matisse in a Boston or Brooklyn series and bring Danny Green or Seth Curry off the bench, scoring off the bench? Matisse tries to defend the other wing or whatever. That's A. And then B, we're talking about locks, and my head starts to spin, right? Does Dwight Howard play himself out of a playoff rotation? Is Dwight Howard playable in the playoffs? In the half-court set, does he become so much of a liability like Greg Monroe and Boban did before? But Dwight's not as bad defensively and protecting the rim. So that's where he has an advantage over them. But offensively, is he that much of a liability where, not maybe he's not playing at all, but maybe he's only playing 8 minutes a game?
I'm going to say this because I got to cut out real quick right after this.
Go ahead.
I don't see Doc being the guy to shuffle around a lineup in terms of starting lineup and bringing Matisse in.
I'm sorry, Gip, but Andrew, that better be a
take that comment back.
That is,
whoever that is.
That is, you are up for worst comment of the year, my friend.
Woo!
God damn it.
I don't think Doc's a guy that's going to shuffle around a starting lineup. I think Danny Green, Seth will both, unless obviously one of them's moved. I don't think Seth will be moved. That contract's way too good. But if Danny Green were to be moved, then obviously someone has to start besides him. But he's not going to go this whole season with this starting lineup. And then all of a sudden, because we're playing Boston, we're playing Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, just throwing Matisse into the starting lineup, especially when we were talking about everybody getting acclimated in this system because we're not 100% there. And I think everyone could see that. So you're not going to all of a sudden throw this curveball into the deal where now we're shuffling guys around.
Right.
So I just had to say that before I head out.
No, I got you.
Have practice. Nice
Coach
meeting you. Awesome. See you, boys.
Scott, so Chris says down here he thinks Howard will be used sparingly. He didn't play in some games last postseason. And I literally, when I tell you, like, this just came to my mind as you were answering, because I'm like, he could be, in certain situations, he could be unplayable, especially if teams go smaller, because it's not like you can use his height in the low post to an advantage, because he can't score really in the low post. He doesn't have a great game in the low post anymore. So Dwight Howard might not be as much of a lock now that I'm thinking about it, where he could be used sparingly, or one game he plays 7 minutes, another he plays 18. There's a lot that goes into it, man.
Yeah. I think you're spot on, and that's actually a great call out. I think he'll stay in the rotation, but it's not going to be nearly like what it is right now. And especially if they bring in another big man, a stretch four, they may run, Ben Simmons out there at the 5 with the stretch 4 at times. So it might not call for Dwight as much unless you're playing against a team like Milwaukee. Boucher, that he did. He exposed Dwight. Dwight couldn't get out on him, and that cost us the game to an extent. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think it's interesting what you brought up about the starting lineup. I think Gintz, he was right with he probably won't change the starting lineup, but he may change the way he staggers it. So Seth might go to the bench fairly early, and you swap Thibault in there. Because I think that's a good point. And that's kind of what I thought before the season, was that you kind of bring Seth off the bench, and him and Shake have like a nice scoring punch there coming off the bench. They can just man the second unit. But, they went the other route. They went with experience, and I get that as well. So it is interesting. They have a lot of different avenues they can go around there.
I agree, man. Well, it's been a lot of fun chopping it up with you. I will definitely be reaching out soon to have you on again. Everyone, you can follow Scott on Twitter at Scotty Drowned. He is the host of the Scotty Talks Philly Sports. You can follow his pod on Twitter at ST Philly Sports 1. Scott, tell the people what you've been up to, where they can find your work, everything like that.
Yes, sir, man. You guys can find it on all the mainstreaming podcast sites, Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts, all of them. You can also find me on YouTube, ST Philly Sports. Be sure to go subscribe to my channel. I'm always bringing the content, especially with Philly sports. I did just start my, all around the NBA coverage. I do that every Monday, just kind of recapping all the latest news to keep, just keep Philly in the loop, what's going on around the league. But we do a lot of Sixers talk on there. It is Sixers based. Don't get it twisted. But Dylan, man, I appreciate you letting me on the show, man. It was a lot of fun. You got a lot of viewers here that are very interactive. I love that type of engagement. So, man,
I know.
Thanks for having me on.
Normally, I'm a lot more involved. Normally, I get their comments up a lot more. I was so distracted and into the conversation today. I was like, I would get down and be like, oh, there's a comment I got to get to. But, yeah, man, thank you so much for coming on, and have a nice night.
Yeah, man. Thank you, man. Appreciate it.